Hello everyone, this is Doxy Mom and welcome back to my channel. If you haven't done so already, I'd greatly appreciate if you hit that little red subscribe button. You can ring the bell for notifications, and if you like this video, just give it a thumbs up. Well, Miss Indy and I are here today to bring you a special report because today is July 16th, 2019. And 20 years ago today, on July 16th, 1999, of course, we lost JFK Jr., his wife Carolyn, and sister Lauren. Now, many of the MSM outlets, well, they are reporting on this today, like Good Morning America, Inside Edition, ABC, and Fox. And I found this Fox article that I'll link in the description that showcases this historian, Stephen M. Gillian. Now, he's releasing a book called America's Reluctant Prince, and I'm sure that this book's going to bring him in lots of money. But Stephen and John, apparently they first met at Brown University in 1981, and John was Stephen's teaching assistant. Now, they bonded over history and racquetball, and Stephen describes John as a very complicated guy, yet a guy full of life, a man who was enormously generous and kind, and he had a short attention span, but he was passionate about civil rights, the Supreme Court, and he knew a lot about modern politics and his father's presidency. You think? Because everything that I read about him said he was going to expose his father's killers, even if he had to take down the whole government. Anyway, now Stephen makes it sound like that John's marriage was in trouble, and because of that, John was not going to run for that New York Senate seat that Hillary ended up getting. Now, there were other articles contradicting what Stephen said that I will link, and we'll talk about those here in just a minute. However, this article follows some of the same fake narratives as the others, like, well, the skies were clear and then big fog came in, even though the tower said that there was 10 to 12 miles of visibility. And they said he was an inexperienced pilot, even though there were witnesses that heard a bomb explode. Now, Stephen, he is complimentary towards John, saying, despite the circumstances in which he grew up, turned out to be such a decent, kind, down-to-earth, unpretentious human being, is probably the greatest testament to his character. End quote. Now, I'll leave a link to this article, and there's a picture of John, Carolyn, and their dog Friday, who was not on the plane. Now, this ended up where the dog ended up with a friend, and the friend moved to Europe. That's the story that I found. Now, all of the news outlets will say that it was John's fault that the plane went down. But guys, I'm here to tell you, the plane went down because of a bomb. So, who wanted John dead? Well, John's father's killer knew that John could expose him at any time, since John had his magazine called George, and we all know that John named his magazine after his father's killer. So, if George had JFK killed, he could certainly have his son killed. Yep, Papa Bush, an evil man. Now, it could have been Hillary. There's no telling how many people she's had killed, allegedly. And she knew that that Senate seat was going to take her all the way to the presidency, or that's what she thought. Anyway, if John ran against her, well, she knew that she was going to lose, and she just couldn't let that happen. So my guess is, while the world was mourning for the loss of John, Carolyn, and Lauren, well, she was popping champagne and celebrating her good fortune. Well, we just need to thank the good Lord above that Hillary is not our president. Thank you, Jesus. Now, here are some facts that I found, some interesting facts that I found about John. First, he was born precisely 17 days after his father won the election. Isn't that interesting? And he turned 3 years old on the day of his father's funeral. That's so sad. Now, John, he always wanted to know things about his father, and he even questioned his daddy's photographer for hours. Now, John had an irresistible yearning for flying from a very young age, and John's mom, Jackie, well, she sort of pressured John to get into politics and expected him to follow in his father's footsteps. Now, in her last letter to him before she passed away with lymphoma in 1994, she wrote, "You especially have a place in history," end quote. Now, in 1995, John started his magazine, George, and that engaged in controversial issues of deep politics that reflected John's interest. And John told his very good friend that he wanted to start a family, and if he had a child, he wanted to name his child Flynn. I wonder if he knew General Flynn. We'll guess we'll never know about that, but he wanted to call it Flynn because it could work for either a boy or a girl, and I had reported on this in an earlier video. But in 1999, John decided to sell his magazine and run for that New York Senate seat, and he told this to the same friend, his longtime friend, Bill Noonan. And Bill also said that John had hired on a personal security team because he was getting ready to announce he was running for that Senate seat. Now, I'll leave a link, and I highly advise you scroll all the way down to the bottom because there's an interview there with Mr. Anderson, and that is very interesting. So, there are so many unanswered questions, guys, but it's nice to look back and remember John, and I just wonder what the world would be like today if that plane would have never crashed. Well, it certainly gives us a lot to think about. Well, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for tuning in. You're welcome to share my content. And until next time, this is Doxy Mom, and God bless you all.